Is that one? We are live. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me, and let me know, as always, with these live streams, if you can hear me and you can see me. And yeah, let's crack on with the live Q&A, the last live Q&A ever before Essen Spiel 2024. There will be another one next month, but don't worry. There's plenty of things to talk about. My chat is working, that is working, everything is all good. So yes, welcome. For those people who are regular viewers, you will know that the format of this show is that I will go through, first of all of the questions that have been asked in advance over on the BGG Guild, and then we'll be handing over to the live questions. Vicky is here, she's monitoring the chat, and if you do have a question for me and you are watching this live, please start with the word question in capitals with a colon, then a space, otherwise it might get missed. And if you do that, Vicky will transfer those questions into the document that I'm viewing. I don't generally see that much of the chat itself. I remember when we used to do these years ago when we started, and I did actually look at the live chat, and I found that it just wasn't possible. The live chat was so busy and active that by the time I'd answered the question, hundreds of messages had gone and I missed them. So the format that we now use is that Vicky monitors the chat and will tell me if there's anything important and essential that happened. So my first question for you is, what is the weather like near you? Because being British, we talk about the weather all the time. And today has been horrendous until about half an hour ago. And the rain stopped and the sun has come out. It has been freezing cold today and it has been pouring down with rain all day. But yeah, about half an hour ago, suddenly it stopped raining and it got all very, very sunny. Right then, so let's crack on. Board Game Geek. Guild number 2258. I have a guild over there. If you are not a member of the guild, you would be more than welcome to join. And what I do is about a week before these live Q&As, I start a thread and I ask for people to ask me questions in advance. The idea for that is for those people that can't make the live show, that do actually want to ask me anything ahead of time. And it gives me a little bit of time to actually plan my answers. And this month, for the first time in a very long time, I've actually had a little bit of time this afternoon in order to go through those questions in advance. So I have scribbled down on a piece of paper in front of me some very rough answers. And one of the reasons for that is we've been having some building work done on the house over the last couple of months. And today was the day where the electricians turned up and took the power out. So from 10 o'clock this morning, the power had gone and it came back at about 2:30, 3 o'clock this afternoon. So we've been without power most of the day, which means no Wi-Fi. We had to, boil water in a pan on the hob in order to make a cup of tea. And, every time we asked Alexa for anything, she didn't respond. So anyway, we're all good. Let's crack on with the first question that I've been asked in advance over on the Board Game Geek Guild, which is from Chad. Over the new games that you've played in the last couple of months, what are my top 5? And he's asked for them in order. I'm not going to give them in order. So here we go. Top 5 games of all of the new games that I've played over the last few months. BLF. Guess the game. Because I told you I've made notes. It's Black Forest. Black Forest has stood out to me of being one of the best games that I've played in the last few months because it is so streamlined and it plays really quickly and it's just really good. I went into the game expecting that this was going to be another, meaty Uwe Rosenberg game, and it isn't. It's nice, it's streamlined, and it plays quick. And yeah, so Black Forest. ELD space S. Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era from Chip Theory Games. I have played this 5 or 6 times over the last few months. Not the full campaign, because this is a game split up into multiple sessions, but I've played it enough to know that it is one of my certainly top 5 games that I've played in the last few months. CIV, Civolution, the new Stefan Feld game, definitely in my top 5. SHA space B, Shackleton Base, live playthrough of Shackleton Base coming in 2 days time if you're interested. Friday night, 7:30 in the PM. Shackleton Base is going to get covered on my channel. It's actually available, I believe, already in the UK, but that was really good. And finally, I've written down SETI, which is short for SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I did a playthrough of that, which went live on the channel on Monday. So those are the top 5 games of all of the new games that I've played recently. Thank you very much, Chad, for your question. Now, Chad's second question bearing in mind, he asked this over the weekend, am I planning to do a playthrough or a rules video for SETI Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence? Yes, the playthrough video went live on Monday, so if you're interested in that, you can check out that video. And CGE are donating a copy of the game to one of you. So if you are interested in winning a copy of SETI, all you need to do is watch that video. There is a link to the contest in the description of that video. There's a couple of questions which you need to watch the video to find the answers for, and you could win a copy of SETI. So thank you very much to CGE for that. It wasn't a sponsored video, so I wasn't paid any money by CGE for doing the video, and the giveaway is them giving the game, not me. Am I going to be doing a rules video for SETI? No, I no longer do the how to play videos for CGE. They've got their own in-house person, who's Eleni, Cardboard Rhino, who does fantastic how to play videos. She was doing how to play videos before she joined CGE. So she is now the official person that does their official how to play videos for their games. Next question from Adrian. Who are your top 3 board game artists stroke illustrators and why? Now, this is a question which I actually put to my Patreon supporters earlier on today on the Slack channel, because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to forget somebody important, somebody who is one of my favourite artists who, you know what my memory's like, I just completely forget they exist. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to put a link, because Stevie posted a very good link earlier on today. There is a link now that I've put in the chat, which is a link to a number of good artists in board games. And I looked through that list, and I will be honest, half of the people on that list I'd never heard of. Some of them whose artwork I recognised but didn't know who they were, and a number of them were popular. So I'm going to give you 3 now. Now, this is bearing in mind that I'm not going to say this is my definite absolute top 3, because I would need to look into it a bit more. But the first one on my list is Ian O'Toole. Now, we're talking here about artists stroke illustrators, and Ian is a bit special because Ian not only does the artwork and illustrations, he also does the graphic design. For those people who don't know, artwork and graphic design are 2 completely different things. And a lot of people might criticise the graphic design of the game and blame the artist, and sometimes the artist has nothing at all to do with the graphic design. Ian's special because Ian does both. So Ian does both graphic design and he does artwork, and I don't feel I'm able to separate out the 2 things. When I think of Ian O'Toole, I think of him as artist and graphic designer together. So because the entire package is very good, I really like that. The next one is Roland McDonald, and I'm thinking specifically here from the Undaunted series of games. Now, Roland has done artwork from other games as well, but it's specifically the ones from the Undaunted series that have caught my attention. I just think they're really good. Now, I will be absolutely honest with you here. Roland would probably not have made my top 3 list if it weren't for Undaunted Callisto, which is the latest game in the Undaunted series. And I've looked at the artwork for that game, and not just the artwork on the box and the character cards, but on the board as well. And it's phenomenal. And what that has struck me is that Roland isn't just good at doing World War II characters. He's a very, I mean, I knew he wasn't anyway, because I've seen some of his other work. But the artwork from Undaunted Callisto is just phenomenal. So I've put Roland on my list as well. And the third one might surprise you. And actually, I've written this down. But before I say this person, I'm just going to look them up, because I don't want to accidentally give away the wrong name of somebody. So just bear with us a minute. Have I got the right person? I have. Michael Menzel. So Michael Menzel might be a name that is new to some of you, and Michael is certainly not one of the, the big popular artists that people now talk about, like Vincent Dutrait, Andrew Bosley, the Miko, people like that. Andrew Bosley came very close to my list, just so you know. But Michael has done phenomenal artwork for games in the past. And the story that I like to tell is that I was at Essenspiel 2006, I think it was. I think it was Essenspiel 2006. And I walked past the Cosmos booth and I saw this game and I bought it based on how good the board looked. Now, that might sound silly, and if I'm honest with you, it probably wasn't just how the board looked, it was what was on the board as well. I saw cubes, I saw little wooden cubes, and I saw workers on this board, and I thought, that artwork looks amazing. I'm going to take a look at this game. And that game was Pillars of the Earth, which, in my opinion, is one of the best games ever designed and absolutely fantastic. So Michael Menzel, definitely up there as well. Right, that's the ones on my list. I've got a number of honourable mentions, but I'm not going to go into that much detail because otherwise I will be here all day. Right, next question is from Ninochka. Seriously considering buying a gaming table, but it's quite a big investment, and I thought I'd ask, what is your ideal table size? Let me know what you think. If you're watching this live, put your answer in the chat, or if you're watching this video back afterwards, what is your ideal table size? They say that they love campaign games and those tend to get bigger and bigger. Yeah, but to be fair, there's a lot of Euro games now that are taking up big table size. So when I was many years younger, the ideal table size was 6x4. And that was because there was a strong wargaming background in my background. I mean, there's a lot of wargaming still going on now, and I don't know if you are a Warhammer player or if you do war games, is 6x4 still the optimum size for a war games table? That's what I sort of grew up thinking, that 6x4 was the best size for a table. Personally, I'm now not sure a 4-foot wide table is the best, because if you need to reach across to the other side of the board, I struggle with my table. Now, my table that I'm using right now, which is a Game Topper, this is 6x3.5. This is about right for me. I think certainly anything less than 3 foot wide is a problem. You need to have at least 3 foot wide, preferably 3.5. But to be honest, if I had a wider room, I would very likely be going for a 6x4 table. Unfortunately, this room that I'm in right now, this won't take a 6x4 table. Our dining room won't take a 6x4 table. And the new studio that we're having built, unfortunately, won't take a 6x4 table. But if I did have the space, I would probably go 6x4. But I think 6x3.5 is probably good enough. But let me know what you think. Next question, what accessories do you think are interesting stroke useless? For example, lights, drawers, tablet and goblet holders. I wouldn't have said any of them are useless. I certainly think having things that clip into the side of your table so that you can put cups and snacks and things like that. I don't know about tablets. On the Game Topper that I have some of the things that slot in to allow you to put your drinks off to the side, which is always a good thing so that they're not on the table themselves. Lights, I have seen some fancy table with lights around them. It looks fancy. I don't think any of them are essential, but it's up to you. A gaming table is an important thing for some people, so splash out and get whatever you want. Next question from Adam. How do I store the games on my shelf, vertical or horizontal? Now, Adam clearly doesn't follow me enough on social media because I am very outspoken about the monsters that we have in the board gaming hobby. I mean, literal monsters that there's just no place for these people whatsoever. And those people are the ones that store their board games vertically. If you are one of those people, then I would strongly recommend going and seeing a doctor, because there's probably some medication that you can get for your condition. I am slightly joking. I store my games horizontally. Now, Adam says he thinks he remembers saying that I store them horizontally, but if I do, which I do, he says, how do I get round the problem of box damage, especially for the games on the bottom? So I have a couple of Kallaxes and a bookshelf, and in one cell of a Kallax, you can probably store about 4 games vertically. Over the years that I've been doing this, I have never experienced any box damage from any game that is on the bottom of a stack. So for me, box damage from games on the bottom is not an issue. Now, if you were to stack 10 games on top of each other, the top 3 of which were Vital Lacerda games, and the bottom of which was a copy of Splendor, you might have an issue, but you just need to be aware of that. So for me, I don't have any problems with any box damage on the bottom. Now, Adam needs help, because Adam says he stores his games vertically. Now, the reason why he does this is to avoid the lid damage, But as I say, I don't have any reasons for that. I don't have any issues with that. And the reason, for those people who don't know, the reason why I don't store games vertically, and I'm being a little bit, I'm joking a little bit here, because some of my games are stored vertically. I'm looking at you, Queen City Collection over there. But I've found that whenever I did store games vertically, especially if you've got a game where there's lots and lots of components, what happens when you store them vertically is those components, there's this thing called gravity, and it will pull all the components down to the bottom. And then what will happen is the box will actually start to separate. So when all of the games are all nicely lined up together, they look great. But then what I was finding is that I took one out, and what would happen is the ones on either side would start to spread and open, and it just, yeah, it didn't look good. So I'm a reformed vertical stacker. In the old room before we got the Kallaxes, I used to have a big shelf, just a couple of feet short of the ceiling, and all of the games on there were all vertically stored, and they did look good when they were all there. But as I say, as soon as you take one out, what would happen is that the boxes would start to open. So anyway, that's my thoughts on horizontal and vertical storage. Next question from John. Have I ever played Magic Realm? If you are watching this video and you do not know what Magic Realm is, go and look it up on Board Game Geek, because Magic Realm is a game from a very long time ago that has a very, it's very reputable, or it's famous, or possibly infamous, because it's very complicated. And I think the story goes that nobody ever in the history of mankind has ever played Magic Realm correctly, because the rulebook is so big and so complicated. I have never actually played Magic Realm, although I am very aware of the game. And to be honest, 30 years ago, I think I remember saying to myself, I'm going to play this game. When I retire, I am going to get myself a copy of Magic Realm, and I am going to make it my life's objective to learn how to play this game, and I'm going to play it, and I'm going to enjoy it. 30 years on, I'm not even going to bother. I've got 200, 300 other great games that I love to play, and it's like, no, it's not worth. I don't think it's worth the effort. But Johnny's saying that he has a basic understanding of the game from reading the rules a few times, as well as some other gameplay explanations, but there's a lot there. He hasn't ever played it or ever been brave enough to teach it. He has heard that Mage Knight is a more modern, streamlined reimagining of Magic Realm. Now, I'd heard that as well. Because I don't know that much about Magic Realm, I'm not 100% sure, but the bits that I've seen of Magic Realm, Mage Knight might possibly scratch the same itch. But what I will tell you about is a game which I did a video for last year, a game called Dragons Down, which was funded on Kickstarter, and I believe is going to be being delivered soon, maybe. I think people might still have it. Dragons Down is a modern implementation of the Magic Realm system from what I heard about it. So check that out. Next question from Daryl. If a friend came round to your house with a game that they wanted to play, is there any game that you would absolutely refuse to play? Brackets. Twilight Imperium, Monopoly and Space Crusade notwithstanding, and Munchkin because it's awful. Daryl's words, not mine. Yeah, in fact, there are probably a lot of games that I would refuse to play. And thankfully, because I'm the one normally hosting the games, I have the freedom for that. But there's a lot of games that I would refuse to play. Games like Cards Against Humanity, games like Flux, or anything like that. There's no point me even trying to play those games. Not even for 10 minutes, not even for 15 minutes. Now, there is a train of thought. I want to just talk a little bit, go off, slightly off topic, but there's a train of thought that it doesn't really matter if it's a quick game, if it's a 10 or 15 minute game, it doesn't matter. Just play it, accept it, and be done with it and move on. My counter argument to that is I have got some really good games that take 10 or 15 minutes to play. So if I'm ever in the position where somebody said, oh, let's play, Flux for 15 minutes, I'd say, well, let's play So Clover, or let's play just one. Let's play a good game rather than a bad game. There's somebody who I used to go to a club with a long time ago who used to say, he lived by the phrase, a quick game is a good game. I could not disagree more with that comment. Whether a game is quick or not has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on whether it's a good game or not. I've got games which you can play in, just one, or even So Clover. We could have a game of So Clover in two or 3 minutes. It's a great game. It's not a great game because it's a short game. It's a great game because it's a great game. So yes, there's a lot of games that I would refuse to play if people came round, and it all depends on the situation and things like that. So there's a lot of good games out there that I would refuse to play for my own personal preferences. If the game was too heavy and too complex and was going to take a 3-hour explanation, or one of the games recently that people have been talking about is Europa Universalis. That's probably a very good game if you have 3 days to play it. I don't, and I don't want at this stage of my life and gaming career or whatever to spend an insane amount of time learning a game that then takes 2 or 3 days to play it. I might be overestimating slightly, but you know what I mean. To then only play it once and then move on. It's like, no, my brain power is limited. Next question from Brendan. Inspired by my recent coverage of Civolution, which he might add has been fantastic. Thank you very much, Brendan. Can I rank my top 10 Stefan Feld games? No. Or if that's too difficult, perhaps just the top 5. Okay, I've made a list. My top 5 Stefan Feld games in no particular order. Civolution, Trajan, Marrakesh, Cusco stroke Bora Bora, because they are essentially the same game, and I've put Castles of Burgundy as well. Now, that's just off the cuff my top 5. There's a lot of other very good Stefan Feld games that I thoroughly enjoy. I am more of a fan of Amerigo than other people were. I did really like that one. I also really like Notre Dame, even though a lot of other people don't. Yeah, there's a lot of very good Stefan Feld games. But there you go. There's my top 5. What do you think? Agree? Disagree? Let me know. Let me know what your top 5 Stefan Feld games are. Has Civolution knocked Marrakesh off the top spot? I think Trajan might have still been the top spot. Civolution is very difficult, and I was actually asked this, I think, last week. Is Civolution now my favourite Stefan Feld game? It's very difficult to classify Civolution, which is technically a Stefan Feld game, as a Stefan Feld game. It's hard to compare it to the others because it's so different. Next question from Nick. Nick is asking for... he wants some idea of the process and the machinations. Is it machinations or machinations? Anyway, that go into your decision making as to what games are featured and played on the Gaming Rules channel. I'm guessing that this has changed over recent years. Yes, absolutely. As both you and the channel have evolved. Yes, I've grown a tail. I think you alluded to being willing to talk about this following the Unconscious Minds upload. Yeah, so Nick is... I think I got chatting with Nick over on a Discord server for Unconscious Mind, and I was posting on there giving them sneak previews of my Unconscious Mind videos, and Nick asked me, what is my process for deciding whether to cover a game on the channel or not? And I said, Nick, that'd be a very good question for my next live Q&A. And here we are. Nick has asked that question. This is probably, the full answer for this is probably about 10 or 15 minutes long. And it isn't all... some of the reasons might be a little bit deep for 5:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, but you're absolutely right that things have changed. When I look back over at some of the games that I covered on the channel even 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and certainly earlier than that, I'm like, why did I ever cover that? Why did I ever cover that game? It was absolutely awful. The game bombed. Nobody was interested. Nobody's ever talked about the game ever since, and it just disappeared. So when I started Gaming Rules, which was 11 years ago now, 11 and a half years ago now, it was my opportunity to start a new career, start afresh. And when I started Gaming Rules, it wasn't ever intended that this would become my career. That just kind of happened accidentally. But at the point where I was building up Gaming Rules and I was basically having to accept money from publishers to create videos because this was my job, this is what I needed to do, I did take on a number of games which the publishers were happy to pay for me to create videos for, which looking back, I probably wouldn't have done. But it's not just right back then, because if you actually, if any of you are looking back at my videos from 10 years ago thinking, oh, which one of these is Paul talking about, I can't actually remember, but that obviously stayed with me for many, many years. And there are a few games, and I'm not going to mention those games now, but there's a few games that I remember covering 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago where a publisher reached out to me and said, we'd like you to do a video for us. And I was like, okay, tell me a little bit about your game. And yes, I'll agree to do it. And we discussed the price. And then I covered it on the channel. And then at some point I went, this game is absolutely awful. Why am I covering that? But at that point, I'd already made a professional commitment. I'd already made an agreement with the publisher to cover the game. Money may have already changed hands and things like that. But I'm trying to be more selective now than I was a few years ago. And that is for probably two main reasons. The first main reason is the support of the Patreon campaign is phenomenal. And I cannot thank my Patreon supporters enough for giving me the financial flexibility to be able to continue not just making this video right now, but there's a lot of videos that I do on the channel which are not paid for by anybody. And all of the advertising revenue goes to charity. So I'm not making any money out of a lot of the playthroughs that I do. And where was I getting to? Yeah, I've lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Reasons for covering games. Yeah, so no, I've completely lost my train of thought. Two reasons why it's been a long day. It's been a very long day. I'll cover the other reason. And this is where, yeah, I don't want to get too much into details, but I'm 54 years old now. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've lost my mum and I turned 50. And I'm not saying I'm going to drop dead in a year's time, but, because I'm not, but it's given me a little bit of a different outlook on life. And I spent most of my life thinking, I'm going to live forever. This is going to be great. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And as I say, now that I've turned 50 and I lost my mum and my dad's ill and all sorts of things like that, I start to realise that I don't have an infinite amount of time on this planet. And I never actually realised that. I mean, I did. I'm not stupid. I don't think I'm a vampire and I'm going to live forever. But it never actually occurred to me that I should take that into account. So this might sound very, very deep and heavy, but these are the things that go into my mind. When I'm deciding what game I want to cover on the channel, I need to look at it and go, am I going to be personally fulfilled myself? Do I want to cover this game? Because I'm at the stage now in my life where I'm not just going to cover a game for money. If a publisher turns around and says, Paul, we've got this new game, we'll pay you X amount of money to cover it on your channel, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, do I want to cover it? Am I going to find it fulfilling? Am I going to find it satisfying? And I'm starting to do that more now. That is more of a priority for me than the money side of it. But it is also very difficult for me to get a really, really good idea about the game before making a decision. So this is the flip side of it. And this is not just for Nick, this is for anybody else. When a publisher approaches me and says, we'd like you to cover this game on your channel, what's your pricing guide? I send them the pricing guide and they say, okay, that's within our budget, we're happy, we'll go ahead. What's the next stage? I said, well, you need to send me a rule book, you need to send me some information about the game. I will spend a bit of time looking at that game. I will have a quick browse through the rulebook. If they've got any kind of trailer video or anything like that, I will probably spend 15 minutes or so trying to evaluate that game to see if I'm going to be interested in it, if I'm excited about it, if I think my followers are going to like it, and all of this lot. And sometimes those 15 minutes is enough. And then I cover the game and I'm happy about it. And at that point, it kind of doesn't matter whether I've enjoyed the game or not. If I play the game and I think, right, I made the right decision here. This is a game which is a good game and I covered it on the channel and it's a fit for the channel and my supporters said, we're happy that you covered this game and everything else, then that's fine. If I actually didn't like the game, that kind of doesn't matter. But when it doesn't work, is that I've agreed to do it based on my 15 minutes of looking at it, and then I sit down, I start learning it, I have a practice game, and I'm like, this is awful. This is really awful. And I know I'm not going to like it, and I know nobody that I play games with is going to like it, and I know that my audience is probably not going to like it. And that's something that I really want to avoid. And thankfully, I am better now than I was. Now, saying that, and again, I said I wasn't going to talk for 15 minutes, and I absolutely am. What you've got to bear in mind is people like myself, and not just myself, and I'm not going to name them, but there are a number of other content creators out there who have very good relationships with certain publishers, to the point where that content creator will cover almost every game that comes out from a certain publisher. So if we were to say, I'm just going to pick one at random, Board and Dice. Board and Dice have been one of my clients now for a few years, and if you are a regular follower of mine, you will know that over the last few years I have done a playthrough video for almost every new, if not every new, Board and Dice game that has come out. Does that mean that I like every single one of those games? No. Some of them have been fantastic. Some of them have been okay. Some of them I've played them a couple of times, done the video, and then said, that's it, I'm not going to play this game again. It's just unrealistic for one publisher to constantly put out games that are unbelievably exceptional. So it could be that I will cover games which are perhaps not necessarily in my list of favourite games from a particular publisher, because I have a professional relationship with that publisher. So yeah, I hope that sort of makes sense. As I said, I could talk a lot longer about this whole thing. It is something that actually I do think about a lot, and it is an important thing to me. So yeah, it isn't just a simple answer. Right, moving on. Avron, have I ever discussed rulebook illustrations? How much of a rulebook should include pictures? It's a very good question, and I haven't ever discussed it, and I don't think I've ever been asked it before. But for those people who don't know, I spent many, many years as a rulebook writer and a rulebook editor, and I didn't just write the words. What I did is most of the time, I was fully involved with the entire production of that rulebook, including not doing the layout myself, but giving help and advice to the graphic designer and the layout person to say, you need to put this here, you need to add some images here, move that over, split this onto the next page. I was fully involved in that process. Yes, you need illustrations in rulebooks, ideally for examples. I would say there can never be too many. But there was one rulebook that I was reading, and I can't even remember what the game was, but there was one rulebook that I was reading about 2 or 3 months ago, and it just had too many illustrations. I mean, literally, there was about 20% of each page was words, and it was just full of illustrations everywhere. And I'm like, it read like a comic book. This was too many. So yes, you need illustrations in your rulebook, but you don't need too many illustrations. You need just the right amount. Next question from Sci-Fi Fun Guy, who wins the award for the best Board Game Geek username this month. And he says, a few months ago, I mentioned that you were listening to an audiobook series called The Cthulhu Casebooks. They tried them out and they said they were pretty great. Always looking for good books. Got any recommendations? Well, for those people who don't know, yes, I was listening to an audiobook series called The Cthulhu Casebooks. These are audiobook versions of real physical books written by an author called James Lovegrove. And these 3 books combined the Cthulhu mythos with Sherlock Holmes. And they were brilliant. I loved them. Really, really good books. I am now listening to the Sherlock Holmes stories by James Lovegrove. So same author, but totally nothing to do with Cthulhu whatsoever. And there's a series of 5 of them, and I've listened to the first one, and I'm halfway through the second one. So I'm still listening to James Lovegrove books, but yeah, if you're interested in that, basically if you are interested in Sherlock Holmes and Cthulhu, you've got to check out the Cthulhu casebooks because they were really, really good. The recommendation from Sci-Fi Fungi is the Final Architecture series by Adrian Tchaikovsky, based on my appreciation of ISS Vanguard stories. So thank you very much for that. I will see if there are audiobook versions of that. So that is the Final Architecture series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Next question from Gavin Kenny. Gavin has just seen a run through for Ember Leaf, and it has a cool new mechanic in it for getting multiple abilities through sliding on a tableau. What new ability or mechanism that you've seen this year has stood out for you as a cool new mechanism? And I've written down new ability or mechanic ? I couldn't think of one. Now, that's not to say that there isn't one, but this is unfortunately, I wrote the question down and then I think something went wrong with the builders and I had to go and help them. So I might have to get back to you on that one, Gavin. I will have another think about it, but we're talking about a new cool mechanism in a game. So let's have a look at my top 5 games that I've played in the last few months. Black Forest, great game. Anything new? Anything cool new mechanism? No. The resource wheel is fantastic, but that was previously used in Glass Road. Elder Scrolls, possibly the cooldown mechanism. We'll come back to that in a minute. Civolution, great game. Loving it. Anything new? Possibly not. Shackleton Base, looking at it because it's over there. Great game. Anything new in Shackleton Base? Possibly not. SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence? Possibly not. So let's go with Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls has a very neat mechanism of cooldown that I don't think I've seen in a game before. And what makes it really neat is that they have evolved and adapted the dice mechanism from Too Many Bones, where you have a series of skirmish fights in Too Many Bones, but you have these skill dice, and when you use a skill dice, it's gone. That's it. You'll get it back at the end of the combat, ready for the next combat, but you can only generally use your skill dice once. And Elder Scrolls, what it does is, generally speaking, when you use one of your skill dice, it goes into your cooldown track. And therefore, the dice go into your cooldown track and you get a certain amount of them back out at the start of your turn. So I like that. It's probably been done in other games, and if it has, let me know. But I think the cooldown track mechanism for dice in Elder Scrolls is the first one that I can think of. Anyway, after saying I wasn't going to be able to think of something, there you go, I have. Next, I have just seen the chat. After saying I don't see the chat much, but Brant is in here with the enemy trigger mechanism in The Mandalorian. Absolutely good shout. That was very cool as well. So let's give it to that one as well. And if you haven't seen that, I have done a playthrough of The Mandalorian, and it involves the players playing cards, and when the cards get to a certain amount, an enemy reaction triggers. So that's very cool. And also, since we're talking about enemy reaction triggers, I did a playthrough last Friday of Primal the Awakening. That was very cool as well. Okay, suddenly, yeah, it's all coming out now. Primal the Awakening is a boss battler, and there is a playthrough on the channel from last Friday. And in it, you are fighting against the boss. But the very cool thing is, the boss doesn't get a turn. But what it has is it has this series of behavior cards which will react to certain things that you do. And what that means is it manages to represent the feelings of playing the Monster Hunter computer game, where you learn an enemy, you learn what it's going to do and how it's going to react to the different things that you're going to do. So yeah, that's very cool as well. There you go. We've got 3 of them for you. Next question is from Neil. What unexpected things, not remotely related to board games, have I learned since starting my YouTube channel, and directly as the result of having a channel? For example, maybe you now know more about UK tax law than you ever wanted to. Or because you once Googled whether you need to pay income tax on income from Google Ads and Patreon. Well, thankfully, I have an accountant who does all of that for me, who keeps telling me all about it, but I don't understand it whatsoever. I'm sure because I've got Vicky who handles all of that, I've not needed to learn it. But what I can tell you is the Patreon money goes into the company. So I don't know how other content creators do it. They might do the same thing, but for me, with Vicky being my accountant, we do everything absolutely by the book. And what that means is the Patreon money goes into the company bank account, and therefore I pay tax on it. Now, one of the advantages with the Patreon system is that they do all of the complicated tax stuff, VAT and things like that at source, because the rules on that have changed over the years. So Patreon is a good system for us because Vicky knows that the money coming in from Patreon has already had all of the different taxes paid in the various countries, something like that. But there's lots of other things that I've learned. I mean, he says, maybe you know more about microphones and green screens than you could ever foresee. Yeah, I mean, you've got to remember, when I started creating videos, I have zero background in any of this whatsoever. Absolutely none. I have never done any kind of course in photography, videography, didn't do any of it at school or college or anything like that. Everything that I've learned to do the channel, video editing, video production, all of that, I've learned myself from scratch. And a shout out to all of the people that have helped me over the years with various bits of advice. But yeah, I've learned a lot about it. And then when I started live streaming, which was about 6 or 7 years ago now, I think, I've learned a huge amount about live streaming and all of that lot. But that's all been self-taught. So yeah, I've learned a lot about that. Now that's directly as a result of the channel, but I would say it's related to board games for me, because I now can't separate board games and the channel. For me, that is now all one thing. I can't have one without the other. Right, next question from Arnold. I know that you have Salt Fjord somewhere on your desk. It's somewhere. Any chance of a playthrough before Spiel? Fortunately not. I have played it. I've played it at 2-player. It was very good. This is the new game from Aporta Games, which is going to be released at Essen Spiel this year. It is a re-implementation of Santa Maria, which had a little bit of a controversial theme, I believe. And they've tweaked a few things. I've played it once at 2-player, learnt it from the rulebook. Rulebook is very good, as always, from Aporta Games, and I really enjoyed the game. So I can't wait to play it more, but there is no chance of a playthrough video for that coming before Spiel, because I leave in less than 7 days' time. Andy Pelton is asking, have I had a chance to try the cola bottle flavour of Jaffa Cakes yet? So, yes and no. No, I haven't tried the cola Jaffa Cakes that you gave me at Manacon. They're still downstairs. But it turns out that I did try cola flavoured Jaffa Cakes at Essen Spiel last year. So I have tried them. They were unusual from what I remember, but I haven't tried the ones that you gave me yet. And have I had a chance to read the Goon? I haven't yet, but I did look at it the other day and think I need to have a look at this and give it back to Andy at GridCon. So yeah, I'll have a look at that later on. Next question from Kat, who is sending me a message from Australia. Have I come across a theme for a board game and thought, that sounds ridiculous, I'm not even going to play it? For example, Wingspan. Kat says, Wingspan took her ages to get to the table because couldn't possibly make a board game about birds until a friend brought it to a gaming group and you thought, okay, I'll play it, and you were completely wrong and you loved it. I'm not sure there is. I'm not sure there is a board game that has ever come along with a theme that I thought sounded ridiculous. Because, I mean, I'll say I'll play anything. I won't play anything. But for me, it's down to the mechanisms of the game. So even if the theme of the game does sound ridiculous, then if the game itself is good, then I'll play it. But it's interesting. What I find interesting is that Kat said the idea of playing a board game about birds was ludicrous at the time. We are now, and I sent a message to somebody about this the other day. I called it the Wingspan effect. I think since Wingspan, since Wingspan, and there's probably other games as well, I'm attributing it to Wingspan, possibly falsely. We have had a plethora of animal stroke nature stroke things growing in a garden themed games. And they seem to be really popular. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I like a lot of those games myself. But at the moment, I think we're in a position where a publisher could just put out a box cover with a cute animal on the front cover or the picture of a tree, and people are more inclined towards that game. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I think we are going through a phase where nature and animal themed games are popular and therefore are getting more attention than they normally would. I don't know, maybe it's always been a thing, but I'm thinking back to 10, 15 years ago, and I can't remember a time where we had so many of these games coming out with cute animals on the cover or anything like that. Yeah, let me know. Let me know. Right. Next question is the easiest one of the week from Vanyo. Pizza or pasta? Pasta. Pizza's nice, but you can't beat pasta. Pasta's just better. Next question from Ellen. Ellen wants to know the exact process for me making my videos. So, I'm not going to go into the full details here because it would be a 30-minute description of how I make videos. But Ellen is one of my patron supporters, and what I do is when I'm creating one of my how to play videos, as a kind of behind the scenes look into my process and a motivational post for me, I regularly give them percentage updates of how far I am through. Now, Ellen, if you are on Slack and you have seen these posts, then let me know, because you actually have access to my spreadsheet. So I have a spreadsheet when I'm working on a how to play video, which is all very structured, and it's got all of the scenes in it and they're all listed out. And what I do is I basically mark the scene as whether I've filmed it, I've edited it, or, you know, I've got all of these different stages. And I've got a calculator that calculates the percentage that I am through. So I can tell you right now, the how to play video for Civolution, I am 85% through stage 2 of that video. And the reason why I know I'm that way through is because I'm filling in all of these boxes in the spreadsheet, so I know exactly where I'm up to, and it spits out that I'm 85% of the way through. But very roughly speaking, first of all, I get the game. I learn the game, which is often done just myself, reading through the rulebook, or sometimes it is get friends round and say, look, we're going to learn how to play this game together. We're going to learn it from the rulebook together as a group. I sometimes do that. So learn the game. Then practice playing the game. Sometimes once, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 or 4 times. And I'm not just practicing learning the game, but I am specifically learning the game with a mindset that I am going to be creating a how to play video for this game. So I need to watch out for not the parts of the game which I find confusing, but the parts where other players are making mistakes. And if after 3 or 4 games I see new players making similar mistakes or finding certain parts of the rules tricky, I will be making a mental note. The next step of the process is I write the script. And when I'm writing the script, I will take into account all of that experience that I've had from teaching the game to people about the things that are going to trip you up. And you'll see this in my how to play videos that I might, especially in the one that I'm creating at the moment, I'll say, look, there's a part that I want to focus on here because this catches out new players of the game. And I'm saying that not because somebody's told me to, because I've got the experience of doing it. So I'll write the script. Then what I always do is I send that script to the publisher. Some publishers are great and they read through the script and they point out anything where it's not quite right, like if I've got a rule wrong, or if they would prefer something worded a different way or something like that. Some publishers will come back to me and add comments to the script. Other publishers will just say, that's fine, we trust you, Paul. And they just let me get on with it. But either way, I ask for approval on the script beforehand. The next stage is that I put some films on in the background and I basically film the video. Now, if you've never seen one of my how to play videos, they are 99% still images, right? There is very little actual video in my how to play videos. It's a series of still images. And the Civolution video, the how to play video for Civolution, I'm just going to tell you this right now. It contains what's 108 plus 661? 769 individual photos. Now, at least 5% of those can just be thrown away because I've taken a photo and I've realized there's a bit of an apple on the screen or something, so I'll move it off and take another one. But it's literally hundreds of individual still photos. So that is the next stage. I basically spend X amount of days with some episodes of Star Trek on in the background while I'm filming all of these individual photos. Then I will go into what I call stage 2, which is actually about stage 4 or 5, but I will be editing those together. And that's what I've been doing this week for the how to play video for Civolution. It's literally editing the video together with all of those still images. I will record the audio, but it'll be just placeholder audio, and I will try to make the video, and then the video will be done. The audio will be temporary, and I won't be on camera, and every scene where I would have been on camera is just blank, and I literally create the whole video. That's the end of stage 2. Then what happens is that video goes out to people for approval. It goes out to my Patreon supporters, specifically Brendan, who finds lots and lots of little things wrong with it, but it goes to the publisher, it goes to the designer, and I say, look, this is the video. You need to watch this, and you need to tell me that this video is correct, because once you've approved it, the next stage is the final stage where I put the script onto the teleprompter, I have a shave, I get dressed up, and I sit there and I record the final stage. And that is me looking at the camera and literally reading out for sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever. And that's all one big long video, one long take. And then the next thing is I transfer that video into the video and I put it underneath all of the other stuff, and I do stage 3 of editing, and then it goes for final approval, and then eventually it's done. My process is very long, it's very detailed, it's very exact, and the reason is that I want that video to be the best video that I could possibly make. I want it not only to be good, it has to be absolutely perfect, and that takes a lot of time. And if you're wondering why I don't create as many how to play videos as a certain other content creator that does lots of how to play videos, I cover heavier games generally, and I also spend a lot more time and detail on that. So there you go, that is my process. Now Ellen also wants to know what my career was before this one, because she knows my process is quite detailed, so she's assuming that my background is engineering or software development. Neither of those. So why am I so thorough and so organized? It's more down to who I am as a person, and Vicky's nodding away. It's down to me being the type of person that I am, how exact I need things to be. I make no secret of the fact that I am a perfectionist. I also make no secret that I have a number of various mental health things. Some of those things work for my advantage, but I get very focused, I get very dedicated, I have such an attention to detail, and I won't accept anything less than perfection. And without such a strict process, the end result wouldn't be good. So I have these processes in place, because otherwise I would not be happy with the end result, and I want to make sure that I'm happy with it so that I can sleep at night. Next question from Peter. Peter says, I have featured many great games on the channel, many of which he has purchased afterwards. My question is, once you have finished your series on a game, how likely is it that the game will be featured again on your channel? I know there are some cases where an expansion comes out or a solo game is requested. Does it take a very special game for you to see it to hit the table again for YouTube content? Peter, you have hit on the biggest problem facing content creators today. And content creators do come in for some criticism, which I think is fair criticism, in that they will get paid or not get paid to create a video on a game, and in that video they will say that this game is the next best thing. This game is amazing. This game is absolutely one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, you've heard me say that. So I get it, right? Now, the criticism that some content creators come in for is that every other game they say that about, and then you never see it again. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. You said this game was the next best thing, and this is one of your favorite games of all time, and yet you have never covered it since that initial video that you were paid to create. And I can see how, from an outside perspective, that might look that this content creator is just a shill. They got paid to make a video to tell you how great it was, and they've never played it since. The reality is that we live in this golden age of board games that's been happening for the last... When was the first time that you heard somebody say, we are living in a golden age of board games? Because for me, it was about 10 years ago. And the golden age has just got more golden, if that's even possible. And we are inundated with a plethora of great games. Some of them not great, some of them very good, some of them just good. But as a content creator, it's really hard. It is really, really hard. I am somebody, and going back to what I was saying earlier on about how I'm at the stage in my life where I want to be fulfilled personally about these games. I don't just want to cover another game, move on, cover another game, move on, cover another game, move on. I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel like the kind of thing that I want to do. I could probably make more money if I did that. If I accepted all of these offers of money for, oh, do a video on this, done, gone. Do a video on this, done, gone. I don't want to do that. I want to be a little bit more selective with my games. But going back to the reality of this situation, the reality is that we just don't have time. There just isn't enough time to cover all of the new games plus all of the existing ones. And for those of you that don't know, in July of this year, I took the week off work, and what I did on that week is I live streamed, was it 12 times? Was it 14 times? I live streamed more in that week than I normally do in a week. But the difference was I wasn't paid to create any of that content. What I did is I took that week off work to address the issues that I was having of, I don't have enough time to play these games that I really want to play. So I took the week off work and I live streamed all of these games. And some of those games I've played, tick, done, moved on. I'm never going to go back to it. And some of them I'm like, I'm really glad I played that again because I've been really wanting to play that game for so long. So this is an issue. And I am guilty, hopefully not quite as guilty as some of the other content creators, but if we look back at some of the games from the last few years that I think are great games, and some of them I have said, this game is probably in my top 10 of all time, but why are you not seeing any coverage of it again on the channel? And let's pick one. Let's pick Voidfall. Voidfall is one of my favourite games. Well, in fact, it is my number one game of 2023, and it is in my top 10 games of all time, probably in my top 5 games of all time, right? Are you ever going to see another Voidfall video on my channel? You might not. Now, does that mean I'm not playing Voidfall anymore? No, I am playing Voidfall 2 or 3 times a year, which is more than most other games in my collection. I don't even play Mage Knight 2 or 3 times a year. So I am still playing the game, but I just don't have time to cover it on the channel. And this is, you know, I was asked earlier on about whether I'm going to be able to cover Saltfjord before Essen. And I said, no, I'm not going to be able to. And you might be thinking, well, why not, Paul? You've got 5 days between now and Essen. Yeah, I've got 5 days. I've been working till midnight the last 2 nights. I'm barely got enough time to get done the things that I need to get done. So yeah, we just don't have the time to cover anything. So it does take a very special game to even play it again, but to get it covered on the channel again, yeah, it's tricky. But I will be wanting to do more playthroughs coming up over the next year. I have a Harakiri campaign starting in November, which is going to be live streamed. I'm not being paid for that at all. I want to do a Primal the Awakening campaign, which again, not being paid for, although it might be. I offered to do a playthrough series for Primal the Awakening, and the publisher was very generous and said, oh, well, when you get round to doing that, let's talk, because we might be interested in sponsoring it. And I was like, okay, well, I wasn't thinking of that. So, but yeah, there's a lot of games that I do want to cover more. Right, next question from Jim. Jim says, if I remember correctly, you were going to do a playthrough or a learn to play video for Aeon Trespass Odyssey. Yes, so I have created a series of 5 how to play videos for Aeon Trespass Odyssey. Those videos are waiting for the publisher to give me the green light to release them. Those videos were finished back in March or April, and I'm still waiting on the green light from the publisher. So it's not a playthrough video. It is a series of 5 how to play videos on how to play Aeon Trespass Odyssey. I probably look about 5 years younger in those videos, even though they were only filmed earlier this year, because filming those videos took a lot out of me. But yeah, they should be coming at some point soon. He said he enjoyed the game when I played a few months ago, though it was a little hard to see with the camera angle. Yes, so I actually did an entire playthrough series of the entire first act of the campaign from Aeon Trespass Odyssey, but they were filmed at a friend's house on a webcam. So they weren't on the public channel, they were Patreon only, because I didn't feel that they were suitable enough quality-wise to be on the public channel. Next question from Radek. I play a lot of games and I have an opportunities to play games with different people. Do I have a regular group of people that I play everything with, or does it depend on the type of game? For example, do I play adventure games with one group and do I play economic games with another group? So it's more the first one. I have a regular, I have access to a number of local players, and whenever I'm advertising a game night, I will put a shout out and I will say, I'm doing a games night, this is the game that I'm playing, who's interested? And people will respond to that, and you're right, some people will prefer one style of game to another, but generally speaking, I don't have, oh, it's this type of game, I'll ask this type of person. It's an open invite and people come along to whatever game they want to. Next question from Mario. Sometimes some content creators, I'm looking at you, Rado, complain about how they don't know how to say the name of the game because the publisher didn't give a pronunciation guide for it. What exactly should a pronunciation, so what is exactly a pronunciation guide and how to use it? And do you think it's important to have in a rulebook? That's a really good question. And I don't think that most board games have pronunciation guides in rulebooks on not only how do you pronounce the name of the game, but how do you pronounce some of the things in the game? And this is my question to you. Do you know of a board game which has put a pronunciation guide in the rulebook? Question is, do I think it's important? No, I don't think it's important. Do I think it's a nice to have? Yes, it's absolutely a nice to have, because as an English speaking person, we are very fortunate that we don't generally have to learn other languages in order to travel around the world, and that has led to us being, as a culture, being a little bit lazy when it comes to having to learn other languages and go out. And what that means is that, from my point of view, I feel guilty and I feel bad when I get some name that I can't pronounce and therefore I mispronounce it. It makes me look like some stupid English person who's very, whatever. So if you give me a pronunciation guide, I will feel better about it, because then I know I am pronouncing the name as correctly as I've been told. So yeah, I think it's a nice to have, but I don't think it's massively important. But hey, why not? If you're going to be writing a rulebook, if you're a publisher and you're watching this video and you're putting something in there and you think, no, people aren't going to know how to pronounce this, tell us, for my benefit. Stacey, can we get a shelfie? She'd love to see the collection in all its glory. No, I'm afraid not. So the reason why you can't get a shelfie is because I don't really have a shelfie. I have the other room where there are 2 Kallaxes, but there are also games piled up on the floor at the moment. There is a cupboard in that room which is filled with games. There's a Kallax in that corner filled with games. There's a bookshelf there filled with games. There's some more games under there. My games are actually spread out in multiple locations. So rather than a shelfie, if anybody is actually interested in my BGG collection, just go onto Board Game Geek. If you head on over to Board Game Geek right now and put in the username Paul Grogan, all one word, you will see my collection. And if you do that and you spot something which you know that I own, which isn't in my collection, please let me know, because it just means that I've not updated it. Final question from Ellen, before we go over to the live questions, is which games have I covered recently in the last 6 months on my channel, which I think will break the top 100? Question is for you. What do you think? And at the end of this video, I will come back to you with which ones I think are going to break the top 100. So give me your answers. Which games have I covered on the channel in the last 6 months, whether it be Patreon only or public, that you think are going to break into the top 100 on BGG? Let me know. Ellen follows up by saying, which ones do you think you will still be playing a year from now, or which ones you would like to be playing a year from now if time wasn't the limiting factor? No, I'm not getting off that easy. I know how you like to skirt questions like this with loopholes. You know me too well. Right, we'll come back to that at the end. So at the end of this video, before we wrap up, Vicky will throw something at me to remind me, and I will answer the question. But while we're still chatting, let me know what you think. So we'll have a short break now. I'll have a cup of tea, which is cold, and contest. Every month, as part of these live Q&As, I give away £50 worth of games vouchers from Games Law. Games Law is the UK's largest specialist games retailer, and we're giving away £50 of vouchers. Now, £25 of that comes from Games Law themselves, and I supplement it with £25 of my own money. And to win, all you need to do is enter the contest. And to do that, you need to click on the link, which Vicky is going to put in the chat, and it's also in the description of this video. And all you need to do is go on there, put in the secret word, and the secret word can be... What can the secret word be? Right, this is the new expansion for Forest Shuffle, and it's called Woodland Edge. So the secret word is Woodland Edge. There you go. And that's it. That's all you need to do. If you are a Patreon supporter, then please let me know, and you will get 2 entries in the hat instead of 1. And I will do the draw sometime around the middle of next month. This Q&A is actually later than usual in the month. We normally like to do them around the middle, but we couldn't do it last week. I can't remember why, but we didn't do it last week. So yeah, next Q&A will probably be in about 3 weeks from now. And if you just enter the contest, okay, it says August, does it? Okay, let me just fix that. I thought I'd fixed that earlier on. Yep, September. Have I ever given you the wrong link? Okay, I've given you the wrong link. Bear with us a minute. Let's give you a new link. Oops. Right, so ignore the link that Vicky just sent. There's the new link. Right, and I will just update that very quickly in the description of the video. Oh no, the form is correct in the description of the video. Yes, it's just the one I gave you was wrong. So apologies for that. I gave you the wrong one. So yeah, if you click on that link, not the first one, the second one, then you can enter the contest and you could win £50 worth of games vouchers. And if you are not based in the UK, you can still enter and you can still win, because it'll cost you a little bit more in shipping, but it won't cost you anything. It'll just come out of your £50. Right, okay, so if you've entered under the wrong link, ignore that, because I've already done the draw. Make sure you enter under the new link. And the winner for last month was, I've written this down, Robert Stapper. Robert has been a Patreon supporter of mine for a couple of years now. So thank you very much, Robert, for your support on Patreon. And congratulations on winning £50 worth of games vouchers. I will be in contact with you officially tonight, if I remember. Right. So that is that. We're now going to go over to the live questions. How many live questions? Are we going to say no more live questions? Based on how much I've been rambling about other nonsense. So where's the questions? Questions are here. That's quite a few. Okay. So I'm going to say no more questions from now on. Thank you very much for all of the questions that we've had so far. But I'm going to request no more questions for now, because that's probably going to take me at least half an hour to get through. If you do have any questions for me, we will be back in a few weeks' time, and you can ask me then. Right, so first question from Matt. Will I be doing a playthrough of Speakeasy? Speakeasy is Vital Lacerda's latest big box game that he's got coming to Kickstarter next week, I think, unless it's already live. I can't remember. Yes, but not yet. So I normally do playthroughs of Vittel's games when they are finished and it's absolutely completely done. And other people will be doing playthroughs of it now, but I will be covering the game when it is coming out. So my video will be the final official video for the game when it comes out. And I prefer to do that myself because you never know what tweaks they might make. I don't think they're going to. Normally, Vittel's games are finished when they go on, but you just never know. So yeah, I won't be doing one anytime soon, but I will be doing one at some point later on. Right, next, from the Sweeples. Have I played a part in the development of the new Lacerda game, Speakeasy? No, I haven't. I haven't had anything to do with it whatsoever. I've not played it. I've not done any work on the rulebook for it or anything like that. So yeah, I know very little about the game other than Vittel comes to the convention each year that we organise, GridCon, and Vittel came to GridCon last year and was running demos of Speakeasy. So lots of my friends have played Speakeasy and I haven't played it at all. So yeah. Jeremiah is asking about that CGE demo technique. When was that and when was your impetus for that? Okay, so for those people who don't know, CGE so Czech Games Edition, on their YouTube channel, they released a video recently about the style that they use when demoing games to people at conventions. Now, I have to just clarify this. This is not how to teach people board games. This is specifically how to demo a board game to somebody at a convention. It's a very different thing. And CGE released a video which covered the method that they use for demoing games. And it actually brought a tear to my eye, if I'm absolutely honest with you, because, and they say this in the video and they give me the credit in the video, that was me. I came up with that. I effectively, this is a long time ago now. This is 8, 9 years ago, something like that. I came up with and I worked on a method for demoing games at conventions, which was a little bit different. And I worked on it a lot myself and I wrote a paper on it and I ran test groups and I did all sorts of stuff on it. And then I started using it and I spoke to Czech Games Edition and I said, look, at the time I was doing a lot of work with CGE and I was helping them a lot and I was a big part of their team that helped set up the American conventions for them. So Gen Con, BGG Con, Origins and things like that. I was an integral part of the team and setting it up. And I said, look, I've got this method for demoing games at conventions, which I'd like to discuss with you and show you how it works. And I did. And they gave me that opportunity. And they said, this is brilliant. This works really well. We are going to adopt this. And this is going to become our official demo method that we use for demoing games everywhere. Now, bearing in mind, if you've ever been to Gen Con or anything like that, you will have seen the size of the CGE demo team there. It's huge. And it was really heartwarming to see Gus and Alini create that video and basically repeat the words which I wrote. Because as I say, I wrote a paper on this. I wrote like a 10-page document on how this method works. And to see years and years later somebody else effectively repeating the lines that I wrote was very heartwarming. And it makes me realise that I was right. Yeah, I'm not always right in life, but sometimes when I feel I am right, I kind of know that I am. And I'm really glad to see that got adopted. And the reason for that, Jeremiah, what was my impetus for that? My impetus for that is, and this is going back a long time, this is going back about 9, 10, 11 years, whatever. I was hearing so many horror stories of people who got bad demos, including myself. So it wasn't just I had a bad experience, so what am I going to do about it? I kept hearing, there was a lot of talk about, oh, I had this terrible demo, and it really made me take a look at the situation and go, well, hang on a minute, Paul. you demo games to people. You've worked at conventions. You've demoed games to people at conventions. Surely there's got to be something. And there's nothing worse for me. Well, there is, but that somebody who is being paid to do a demo gives you a bad demo. Either they don't know the rules right, or the structure was wrong, or So it gave me the motivation to say, I'm going to try and do something about this. And I spent a year doing all of this research, talking to all of these people, everybody who ever posted on BGG to say I had a bad demo experience. I contacted them privately and I said, can we have a discussion? And I would have a verbal discussion with these people. If I didn't intrude on their personal time. I said, look, do you mind if I ask you some questions? And I got so much information and I learned about what makes a bad demo, why these demos were bad. And it made me think, right, there's got to be a way of doing this. So I did, and I came up with this method for demoing games. And that is a method which I still use to this day. And if you have got a demo from me at a convention in the last 5 or 6 years, you will have probably seen this method. And remember what I said at the very start. This is a method specifically for demoing games to people at a convention. It is not a method for teaching people how to play games. That's a separate thing. And if you are getting a demo from me at Essen this year, I'm going to be demoing Galactic Cruise. It will be using this method. And what's interesting is last year at Essen, I demoed for Board and Dice. Board and Dice asked me to demo for them at last year's Essen. And I said, okay, I will, but I must insist on using my particular demo method for demoing games. Now, bearing in mind, last year at Essen, I was demoing Nucleum. Nucleum is a heavy game. Nucleum is a 45-minute explanation if you want to teach somebody how to play the game. Now, a demo at a convention should be a demo. It should give the person who is having the demo an idea about whether it's the kind of game that they are going to like. The worst demo that you can ever do for a game at a convention is a 45-minute teach and then walk away and go on to the next table and leave them there for 4 hours to then play the game. Oh, give me a shout if you get stuck. No, that's not a demo. And that is a terrible, terrible way of teaching how to play a game at a convention. So I said to them, I've got this demo method. The idea is that we will do demos which will last 1.5 to 2 hours, no more. And in that 1.5 to 2 hours, it will be an interactive demo where over the entire course of that time, we will be teaching the rules as we go. And they said, we already do that at Board and Dice. And I said, oh, right. And they said, yeah, not only do we do that at Board and Dice, we've actually written an entire script on how you should demo this game. So they sent me this script. It was a 4-page document. And they said, look, we're going to start 4 turns in. We're going to set the board up like this. And you're going to explain it step by step. And then you're going to go through the actions. And for the first round, it's going to be scripted so that each player will do a specific thing. And as they're doing them, you'll explain how that works. And I went, this is my method. So I'm going to take the credit for being somebody who came up with it and putting a lot of effort into it. But I wasn't the only one. Turns out that Board and Dice already had this as their method for teaching people how to play games at conventions. So anyway, again, I could talk about this even more if I wanted to, but I've talked enough about it. That was what started me doing it, is because there was a whole load of really bad demos. And it still disappoints me now. I heard a number of stories from last year's Essen of somebody saying, we wanted a demo of a game. The person talked to us non-stop for 45 minutes and then walked off. If you are somebody who demos games at Essen, please do not do that. It is not a good demo. That is really not a good demo. Next question from James. What games are you looking forward to playing and bringing home from Essen this year? Oh, all of those ones that I listed on that list the other day. So I posted on my Slack channel the other day about games that I've got coming in. So bearing in mind, I've already played SETI. I've already played Civolution. I've already played Black Forest. I've already played Shackleton Base. These are all games that are coming out at Essen, which if I hadn't already covered them, I would be super excited about covering them because they look great. and I can confirm I've played these games, and they are great. Also, Saltfjord as well, Spectacular is really good. So there's a lot of games which I have covered recently. Of the ones which I haven't covered yet, you're going to make me look through this list, aren't you? Where is the list? Where is it? I posted it a few days ago. Here we go. And again, I don't know these are going to be good or not, but Asian Tigers. Asian Tigers looks good. It's from Nuno and Paolo, two designers who have done some great games in the past, so I'm really looking forward to that one. Beyond the Horizon, I've heard really, really good things about the original version of that game, which I can't remember what it was called. But Beyond the Horizon is a non-sci-fi version of the game that I can't remember what it's called. The White Castle expansion I'm looking forward to. The Evenfall expansion. The Pirates of Maracaibo expansion. Daitoshi, I'm looking forward to that as well. So Resafa, the new Vladimir Suhi game. So yeah, what else have I got? Yeah, there's a few other ones as well. I still need to put my list together. And a new game got put on my radar the other day, Galaxy Postman, which might sound unusual, but it's a pick up and deliver game. And I love pick up and deliver games. And as of an hour ago, or 2 hours ago, I've had an email from the designer that he has kept a copy of that aside for me. So I'm going to be getting that as well. So yeah, lots of new games that I'm looking forward to. Next question from Frank. How stressful is the making of the Civolution video? That's a really good question, Frank. I will tell you right now, it's not stressful at all. And the reason why, because there are certain videos that I have created which are really stressful. And this one is an absolute joy because I love the game. The rulebook's clear, so I feel really comfortable that I've got the rules right. I don't have to keep going back to the designer with email after email after email saying this contradicts this contradicts that. I've had to do that with some videos. This video, they gave me the game, they gave me the rulebook. The rulebook's really good. I've learned how to play and I'm actually enjoying the process. I mean, don't tell the publisher that because then they might not pay me, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It is taking me a lot of work, and the only reason it is a little stressful is that I wanted to reach a certain point in the process of creating this video before I go to Essen, and I might not get to that point, but that's not stress as such. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. Next question from Ben. Are you covering Black Forest solo? I have no plans to, but I want to. I do want to. It's Uwe Rosenberg, and therefore the solo mode of Uwe Rosenberg's games they're Paul friendly. They're very Paul friendly. So I'm going to assume, I don't know this, but I'm going to assume that the solo mode for Black Forest is a very Paul friendly solo mode, and I would like to cover it at some point. I just don't have any plans to at the moment. That doesn't mean I'm not going to. Just means right now it's not in my calendar. Next question from Marco. How do you manage to keep your head attached when every single day you're constantly bombarded every 5 minutes by somebody you need to hold their hand through whatever you need to do? That sounds like Marco's job. That sounds like that's your job, and not mine. Thankfully, most of my work is down to me. I mean, I am bombarded every 5 minutes by something, but generally not somebody who needs their hand holding through whatever they need to do. Next question from Peter. Horizontal or vertically stored games? Please refer back to my earlier tirade about that. That was what, the second question, I think. So yeah, Peter, if you missed that, scroll back to the start of this video and I talk about that near the start. Next question from Bombessa. Anybody aware when the tutorial for Aeon Trespass Odyssey may drop? I've mentioned that as well. Yes. So at some point, I'm hoping within the next month or two, but I don't know. Next question from You Know The Thing. Who is your favourite solo gearlock in Too Many Bones? Playing solo Gasket right now and loving it. My normal answer for any questions like the who is your favourite character is I don't know. I haven't played any of these games enough to know which character would be my favourite one. What I will tell you though is that for Too Many Bones, where the complexity level and understanding how an individual gearlock works is outside of my comfort zone, I prefer playing the simpler ones. So I remember trying to play Stanza and almost threw the game in the bin because I just could not understand it at all. But I like some of the ones that have been included in the original game. So I think, is it Patches, the one that's healing? I think that's quite a simple one to play. So I like that because I can understand how the character is supposed to play, whereas one of the more complex characters might be more interesting. I struggle. I lose track of how it's supposed to work and what it's trying to do. So yeah, probably Patches, and I think there's another simple one from the original set as well that yeah, I can't remember who they're called. Next question from RP: is Civilization 2 luck driven with the die rolls? It's a good question, very good question. I don't think it is. Now, saying that, and a lot of people will know Castles of Burgundy very well, so I'm going to literally talk about a different game. So instead of talking about Civilization, I'm going to talk about Castles of Burgundy. Is Castles of Burgundy 2 luck driven with the die rolls? That's the question you need to ask yourself. If you feel that Castles of Burgundy is not 2 luck driven, then Civilization is going to be okay for you. If you do not like Castles of Burgundy because of the luck factor of the dice, then you might have the same problem with Civilization. My thoughts on it are that Castle of Burgundy is a great game. And I remember there was one person who I played, I think it was 250 games online of Castles of Burgundy with. This is going back probably about 10 years. And remind me later, Vicky, to tell you who this was. And we repeatedly played 2-player Castles of Burgundy, and every time a game finished, we set up another one. And I think I played about 250 games against this person. I won, I think it was like 95% of them. Now, that is a true story. That either means I am amazing at this game, or the other person is rubbish at this game. But let me tell you, this other person is not rubbish at games. They are good at games, and I am good at games. But I was better at that game. So there is the luck factor of the dice. And absolutely, I had a game of Castles of Burgundy that I have literally finished yesterday playing on Board Game Arena. It was the very last turn of the game, and I ended up rolling a double 4. And if it was a 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6, I could have done something to get me points. And I rolled a double 4. So my last roll of the game, it was a double 4. I didn't have any workers left. I was like, as long as I don't roll a double 4, I'm okay. And I rolled a double 4. It can happen. It can absolutely happen. In any game where you're rolling dice, the luck can be with you and the luck can not be with you. And those people who say, but you can mitigate your dice by workers. Yeah, you absolutely can. You can mitigate your dice by workers. But in order to get the workers, I mean, there's other ways to get the workers as well, but one of the things you can do in the game is you can spend one of your actions, and you only get 50 actions in the entire game. You can spend one of your actions to gain 2 workers. The point is, if you are lucky and you always roll the dice that you need, then you will get 50 useful actions in the game. But the chance of that happening are very, very slim. So that's Castles of Burgundy. Civilization actually has more ways to mitigate it, because as well as the spending dice to get ideas, which are the effective equivalent of workers, you can manipulate your dice up or down by 1. You've also got planning markers, you've got focus markers, there's lots of other things you can do. So Civilization is a game where you will roll your dice at the start of each of your resets, whatever, and then you will allocate those dice to actions, and depending on the values of the dice, which you can manipulate, will tell you which actions you can do. I'll be absolutely honest with you now, if you are the kind of person that goes, right, on this turn, I want to migrate. I don't have a 1 and a 3. This game sucks. And you get angry because you wanted to migrate and you didn't roll a 1 and a 3. Do not play Civilization, right? I'm just telling you that right now. Don't bother about it. It's a heavy game, and if you're going to be angry because the one thing that you wanted to do you can't do because of the dice, then it's not the game for you. Civilization is a game where you have so many different options and you have to adapt. If you really wanted to migrate and you didn't roll a 1 and a 3, and you've left yourself with no focus markers and you've left yourself with no ideas, do something else. Because there's 23 different actions you can do in the game, I think. And even if you can't do the exact thing you want to do something else, and then do a reset, roll your dice, and oh look, you've now rolled a 1 and a 3, then migrate. I'm just giving you this as a word of warning. I think the game's great. I love it. I don't think the luck factor is a problem, but I know some people who go, at this point in the game, I want to do this specific thing, but I can't because of the dice. The whole game sucks. Then you're gonna have a problem with it. Next question from Paul Snuggs. Are you thinking of doing a behind the scenes look at the new studio? Well, let's wait until the new studio is done, and then probably. But that's still quite a way away due to various issues that we're having with it. Next question from D Ditto. Do you think you need to play Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon before Kings of Ruin to get a better picture of the story, or can you just jump in on the latter? Second easiest question of the evening. You do not need to have played Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. In fact, I would go so far as to say do not play Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon beforehand. Now, I'm saying that based on the 1.0 rules of Tainted Grail. If you have the update pack for Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon, which I think, does it make it 1.5 or is it 2.0 or whatever? Anyway, the update. If you've got the update, then it's up to you. But I would strongly recommend not playing the original Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. And I am saying that as somebody who has played the entire campaign of Fall of Avalon and loved it. But the reason why I'm saying do not play it is because it did come in for a lot of criticism, and the update pack fixes pretty much most of that criticism. So why play that when you could play a better version of it? What I'm saying is don't play 1.0. If you've got the update pack, play them in whatever order you want to. We are halfway through Kings of Ruin. You do not need to have played Fall of Avalon at all. In fact, I don't think there's any references that there would be there's no benefit from a story point of view, and there's no spoilers from a story point of view, as far as I know. It's difficult because we've played all of Fall of Avalon, so we have that knowledge of the world going into it before we played Kings of Ruin. But no, I don't think you do. I think Kings of Ruin is designed as a standalone product, and you do not need to have played Fall of Avalon first. Right. Next question from Matt. What are my top 5 list topics? Oh, that is a very Matt question. What are my top 5 list topics? So top 5 things to put in your breakfast porridge, which for those people in America, oatmeal is what you call it over there, but we call it porridge. So I think definitely top 5 things to put in your porridge would be one of them. Top 5 things to do when the power goes out for 5 hours. One of which was looking for a power block that we didn't find. And third one, top 5 biscuits. Top 5 biscuits that you can dunk in a cup of tea. Yeah, there you go. Top 5 biscuits that you can dunk in a cup of tea. Right. Next question from Zach. Is Civolution Feld's magnum opus? It may well be. I mean, I've spoken about this a couple of times already. Civolution is not your normal Stefan Feld game. Stefan Feld has designed dozens of games. I've played more games of his than anything else. And when you look at Castles of Burgundy, Trajan, Marrakesh, Hamburg, Amsterdam, not to mention the new City Collection ones, Rialto, New York City, Cuzco, Vienna, all of those Stefan Feld games, they're all Stefan Feld games. They all feel like a Stefan Feld game. They're all medium weight. They all take about 2 hours. They all point salady. They all have got a theme which doesn't really make that much difference to the game whatsoever. And then you've got Civolution. Now, I will be absolutely honest with you here. And this is kind of inside information. When I read the rulebook and played Civolution for the first time, I contacted the publisher and I said, I felt that the dice selection for action mechanism was very, very much Stefan Feld. It's a logical evolution of the one from Castles of Burgundy. I said, but tell me, be honest with me, is that it? Did Stefan just design that bit and you've put his name on the box and it's actually other people that have designed the rest of the game? Because my impression when I first played it was that this isn't a Stefan Feld game. This is a Stefan Feld core mechanism, but then a random development team have come on and actually done the rest of the game, but they've put Stefan Feld's name on the box. And because of my relationship with the publisher, I felt comfortable in asking that question. And the answer I got back was, actually, no, this is pretty much mostly a Stefan Feld design game. And I was like, oh, wow. So to say it's his magnum opus is kind of like, well, I've already said that for me, it's very difficult to answer the question of, is this my favourite Stefan Feld game? Because on the surface it is. But because it feels so very different from all of his other games, it's hard for me to even categorise it as a Stefan Feld game. But it is. Technically it is, and realistically it is. So maybe it is. Now, what I do know is that the publisher contacted Stefan and said, we'd like you to design a game for us with a civilization theme, but we would like a heavier game than most of your other games. And Stefan went, okay, off I go then. And he did. So there you go. Yeah. As for whether it is his magnum opus, I don't know. I honestly, I think that people will still prefer Castles of Burgundy, because when you talk about a Feld game, you're talking about a 2-hour game that's got a 25-minute teach, and Civolution is double that. So yeah, I think it fits slightly outside of the wheelhouse of a lot of the people who play most of his other games, if that makes sense. Next question from Peter. What is your rule on takebacks in a teaching game? Do you allow them, don't limit them, and how do you deal with frustrated players if you don't allow it? So if you have seen any of my playthroughs that I have done on the channel, I allow takebacks. I am a big believer in takebacks, especially in teaching games. And I have, over the years, I have known people who have a no take-back rule. And I can see the reasons why. I absolutely can see the reasons why. So let me know what you think. If you're watching this live, let me know in the chat, take-backs or no takesy-backses. And if you're watching this video afterwards, let me know what you think. Do you allow take-backs? And if so, do you allow take-backs in teaching games? And do you allow take-backs in non-teaching games? I allow take-backs in all situations, except when another player has moved on and made a decision based on what you did. Now, I can see one of the reasons why people don't allow takebacks, which is it disturbs the flow of the game, it messes up the gameplay, and it just makes the whole thing more confusing for everybody. I get that. I absolutely get that. For me, I come about it from the opposite way. I want to play a game and I don't want people to feel frustrated because they said, okay, it's the end of my turn. I'm going to gain this. I can either gain this as a wood or as a papyrus. Okay, I'll gain it as a wood. Okay, your go. I've made a decision to gain it as wood and move the game on, and it's your go. And then while you're taking your go, I look at the cards in my hand and I go, oh, wait a minute. This costs papyrus. Sorry, I forgot this costs papyrus. Just going to change my mind. I'm just going to move it from there to there. Okay, that has affected nobody. Absolutely nobody. And yet, if you don't allow takebacks, I'm screwed. My whole game plan is now screwed because I don't have the resource that I needed because I made a slight mistake and I put it in the wrong place. So takebacks for me should be allowed as long as either the game hasn't moved on or somebody hasn't made a decision which could be impacted by the thing that you're going to do. And yeah, I've actually had some people leave some negative comments in some of my playthrough videos and said, oh God, I hope I never play again with you. You allow takebacks. It was awful. Don't ever do it. It's like, fine. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But for me, that's the way I do it. Next question from the Sweeples. Wait, you're not a vampire. I'm not. But I'll tell you what, to be absolutely honest, if a vampire came along tonight and said, I could give you immortality, I would be thinking, just think how many board games I'd be able to get played. I'd seriously consider it. Not for the fact that I'd, have all of this power, I'd be able to mesmerize people and none of that stuff. Just so I could play more board games. Yeah, I think is that right? You don't mind? I'm just asking permission from Vicky to become a vampire, because that's how relationships work. Right, next question from Georgios. What emotions and thoughts have you on the phrase, it's only a game? Georgios says, for me, it makes me rather uneasy, as I think it's more than that. Now, that's a good question, Georgios. And actually, it depends on the context in which those words are said. So we might need to have a chat about this. Georgios is coming to GridCon, so come to GridCon, we can have a chat about it, or we can talk about it on Slack later on tonight. The phrase, it's only a game, it could be used in a multitude of situations, but I think what you might be referring to is people who sort of write stuff off and dismiss your thoughts on it. So, for example, if we're playing a really serious Euro game and we're really into it and we're really trying our hardest in order to try and win, and you're there and you're spending all of your mental energy on trying to line up your resources. I mean, I've just finished a game of Gaia Project on Board Game Arena, which was one of the most intense. I had to calculate everything to the absolute nth degree, to the point where on the last round of the game, I had to literally do a specific thing, and then I had to use one ore to gain one power marker to give me just enough power markers to make a federation, and I ended the game with no money, no ore, no power markers, no nothing, but I did exactly what I needed to do, and I had exactly the right things, and that took a lot of time and effort. And if me and you were playing a game and I was putting in that amount of time and effort, and you just sort of went, oh, I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to do some random things because it's only a game, it doesn't matter. And you're like, well, I know that it's only a board game, and I know in the grand context of life this doesn't matter, but right now I'm putting a lot of time and effort into this, and if you're not, then that's yeah, if that's kind of what you mean. I don't know, but yeah, let's have a chat about it. I'm also not keen on that phrase, because the only times I've heard it said are when somebody's being dismissive of your feelings and kind of saying, it doesn't matter. Anyway, next question from Rick. Do you think your friendship group covers all the breadth of game player stereotypes? No, I don't think it does. I don't think, this is referring presumably to the question earlier on about whether I've got specific friends that I invite round for economic games, specific friends that I invite round for other games. And what I said earlier on is kind of true, but there's also groups within that. For example, if I get a new Star Wars game, I'll invite Rick round. Rick will be the first person who I invite round if it's a Star Wars game, because I know Rick loves Star Wars and I'll give him first shot on the game. So, but I think my friendship group does not cover all of the game player stereotypes. And I am going to say that if the only types of games that you play are role-playing games, social deduction games like Blood on the Clock Tower and Cards Against Humanity, if they are the only types of games you play, then I would say you are not in my friendship group, because I don't cover any of those games whatsoever. I have no interest in playing any of those games really anymore. And if they are the only types of games that you play it's unlikely that we're ever going to get to know each other. So that's just how it is. Right, we've got a few questions left. So from Miller Art, any plans on doing a Daitoshi playthrough anytime soon? Yes, I mentioned this earlier on. I have had an email back from Thames and Cosmos UK about getting me a copy of that game, and they might be getting it to me at Essen or after Essen. So I'm excited about that game because of the designer's pedigree. So I'm going to be covering that hopefully at some point after Essen. So the way it's going to work, let's just touch on this briefly. Any of the games that I come back with from Essen Spiel that I am not doing a sponsored playthrough for, I will be posting on my Patreon page and saying, vote now. And what will happen is over the next 3 months or so, I will be covering the games in the order in which they are voted on my Patreon page. So if you're a Patreon supporter of mine, expect some kind of vote to go up. You have to be a producer level or higher, but there will be a vote going up probably the week after I get back from Essen with, here's all the new games that I've got. Which order do you want to see them in? Now, if I have any sponsored playthroughs, they're already planned. They are already in the diary. So, for example, Kraftwagen, the new version of Kraftwagen from Arcane Wonders, I've agreed a playthrough of that. That's happening. That's coming to the channel. But anything that's not sponsored, it will be voted on by my Patreon supporters in which the order will do them. But hopefully that one will be on there. Next question. Have I played Stalker and what are my first impressions? So to tell you that I haven't played Stalker is a lie, because I actually did rulebook consultancy for Stalker months ago. So months and months and months ago, Awaken Realms contacted me and paid me to do rulebook consultancy on the game. What that meant is we sat down for an entire day and tried to learn how to play the game from the rulebook, and then we played the game from the rulebook, with the designers watching to see where we got stuck, so that they could go and improve the rulebook. I haven't played it since then. My initial impressions were positive. I quite liked the setting of the game and I quite liked what it was going to do. And it was because of that that I contacted Awaken Realms and said, would you like me to do a playthrough of this game once it is finally out? I now have the physical game. I have done an unboxing video of it, and I do have a sponsored playthrough planned. Let me just tell you when it will be so that you can set your diaries, because it's either the end of October or the end of November. I think it's the end of November. 29th of November. Yeah, 29th of November, which you might think, wait a minute, that's like two months away. It is 2 months away, but literally my diary is pretty solidly full for the next 2 months. So there will be a live playthrough of Stalker happening on Friday evening, 29th of November. Next question from Frederick. Why is Jaffa Cakes being a constant topic here? It's a very good question, Frederick. And this whole thing started when I started going to the American conventions, which is now... When did Codenames come out? 2016? Codenames, Board Game Geek, I'm going to say 2016. 2015. So Codenames was released in 2015. That is the first year that I went to Gen Con US, and I went with Czech Games Edition, and we were demoing Codenames. And for the years following that, I would be going to 3 US conventions every year. I'd be going to Gen Con, I'd be going to BGG Con, and I'd be going to Origins. This is before PAX Unplugged was a thing. And at those American conventions, I knew that I was going to be a British person with a funny accent. And I knew that I was going to be demoing games to Americans, and they were going to be like, who's this guy? He's got a weird accent. And because of which, I kind of wanted to do something that I thought would be funny. So what I did is I always took with me a packet of Jaffa Cakes, which I think are very well known in the UK, but I don't think are very well known in America. And what I would do is every time I ran a demo, I would be sat there with a packet of Jaffa Cakes on the table, and people would be looking at them and like, no idea what's going on. And at the end of the demo, whoever won would get a Jaffa Cake. And the way that I did it, and again, this is my sense of humour, we would get to the end of the demo and I would say, oh no, I'm really sorry, there's a really important rule that I forgot to mention. And they're all like, what? You know, you've just taught us this game and now you're telling us at the end of the demo there's a really important rule that you've forgotten. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm really sorry, there's a really important rule of this game that I've forgotten, which is the winner of the game gets a Jaffa Cake. And I did this literally every single demo that I ran for about 2 years. And people mostly found it funny. mostly I got some giggles. Who's this strange British person? But essentially, it became part of me running demos at American conventions. Is that I would hand out Jaffa Cakes because, generally speaking, people didn't know what they were, and it's unusual. And if you don't know what a Jaffa Cake is, Google it. But it's like a weird kind of soft biscuity base with a layer of dark chocolate with an orangey centre, and they're really nice. But it just became a thing, and then it became a thing that I was known for, and it's one of those, like, kind of a meme that now people associate me with Jaffa Cakes, and they might not actually know why. So that's the story about the background. Right, 2 questions left. Next question from Aaron: what is your game night snacking policy? Don't really have one. We don't have a policy. I mean, what I will say is any time we're doing a live stream, no snacks. Can't have any snacks while we're doing a live stream because the microphones will pick up all of that noise. But I don't have a policy when we're not playing games on a live stream. I don't have any strict rules on it. But I think that's because my people who I normally play games with are sensible. They're not going to sit there and eat a pizza with their hands and then pick up my precious Mage Knight cards. They're not going to do that. So yeah, I don't really have any kind of policy on snacking. Final question. What is the average? This is from Spirider34. What is the average amount given to a content creator to produce a video about a game? There is no average amount. I can tell you that. Everybody has their own rates. Everybody has their own rates that they've set. And just to be clear, 90% or 95% of content creators will not take any money for creating videos. There are many content creators out there who are reviewers, who do it for fun, who do it as a hobby. There's even reviewers who do it professionally. In other words, they run a crowdfunding campaign or they have a Patreon or something like that. And there's a lot of people out there creating content who do not get paid any money by publishers. Let me just get that out there. But there are other people like myself who work full-time in the industry, but some of the work I do is paid for and some of it is not. But I don't believe there is an average amount. What I did when I was coming up with my rate sheet is that I tried to evaluate how long it would take me to do. So, for example, this Friday, I am doing a tutorial and playthrough of Shackleton Base. I expect that video to be 2.5 hours long, maybe 3 if there's a slow player at the table. But I reckon it's going to be a 2.5 to 3 hour video. So from your point of view, as a viewer of my channel, you will see 2.5 to 3 hours work. What you don't see is you don't see the 2 hours or the 1.5 hours that it takes me to get the studio ready, set up the game, work out exactly where everything's going to go, work out, pre-program all of the camera angles, do all of that, get the cameras set up. What you don't see is you don't see the 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon where we play a practice game of it, which, yes, is playing games with friends, but it is still work. What you don't see is you don't see all of the practice games that I've had, and you don't see all of the discussions that I've had with the publisher and the designer about some things that I felt were not clear in the rulebook, and I've helped identify that there's a couple of bits of errata with the game. So there is going to be some official FAQ and errata for the game, which I've helped contribute to. So overall, when I am working out how much money I should charge a publisher for that work, what you see is the 2.5 hour to 3 hour video, and you might think, well, that's only 2.5 to 3 hours work. It's actually not. The total amount of hours that I would have put into that game in order to produce that 3 hour video is somewhere between 12 and 15, which is 2.5 days work, or two days work or something like that. So yeah, it's actually quite a lot of work that goes into it. And bearing in mind, I also pay my guests. So anybody who comes over and is with me on a video that I've been paid to do, I feel it is morally the right thing to do, is to pass some of that money on to my friends. None of them have ever said that they want it, or that most of them have said, we don't want this. We are coming round to play games because we like coming round and playing games. And I've said, I'm not paying you for this. I've been paid for it, and I can't do it without you. So I'm going to pay you, for being with me on camera. So yeah, that's how it works. Right, that is everything. So just before we finish up, thank you. Yes, contest. Don't forget about the contest. No, I know the other thing as well. I know. I had forgotten, but thank you very much. So yeah, the contest. If you haven't entered the contest yet, click on the link. Vicky's going to put it in the chat. You're going to put the right one or the wrong one? The right one. Oh, it's my fault. I gave you the wrong one earlier on. Anyway, there's a link in the contest. The secret word is Woodland Edge. I'm going to have a look at this tonight. I don't know what's in here other than new cards for Forest Shuffle. So Woodland Edge is the secret word. Enter the contest. You've got a few weeks to enter. I will be doing the draw on the day of the next live Q&A, which will be sometime around the middle of October. So good luck to everybody for that. And you could win £50 worth of game vouchers. And just as a reminder, £25 of that comes from Games Law themselves, and £25 comes from me. Right, the final thing is, which games do you think that I've covered on the channel in the last 6 months could break into the BGG Top 100? What did people think? Did we have lots of people suggesting things or not? Okay, so my thoughts were Civolution might. It might. I'm really curious to see if Civolution is accepted as much as I think it deserves to be accepted. For me, it's a phenomenal game. I love it. I absolutely love it. But we'll see. I also think the Elder Scrolls from Chip Theory Games might, not initially, but over time, make the top 100. I think Elder Scrolls from Chip Theory Games is a phenomenal game, and I think that might break it into the top 100. I don't actually know where Too Many Bones is at the moment, but Too Many Bones has got a bit of a cult following. So Too Many Bones is 33. On the top 100 BGG games of all time, Too Many Bones is 33. I think Elder Scrolls might break into the top 100. I also think SETI might break into the top 100. That's the one I'm less sure about. It is a very, very good game, but games have to be not just amazing, but games have to be amazing and long living. I recently posted a thread on the BGG Guild, and if you are on the BGG Guild, head on over there, and if you're not, join the BGG Guild, because I made a post earlier this week about what hot games from Essen 2023 are still being played. And this is because every year, all of the content creators will be saying, these are my most anticipated games of Essen 2000 and whatever. And so many games will be getting a huge amount of buzz, hype, attention and everything. How many of those games are still being played a year later? And that was what I found interesting. So there is a thread on my BGG Guild right now, if you want to go and have a look, of what games from Essen 2023 that were hot and everybody was raving about them are actually still being played now, and which ones have fallen by the wayside. Yeah, to give you an idea, Nucleum was one of the hottest rated games at Essen 2023. People are still playing it now. Now, it's had a couple of expansions. Maybe that's helped maintain its sort of momentum. But Nucleum on the BGG ranking is 213. And Nucleum is a game which I feel could potentially make the top 100. but it's currently 213. So it does take a while for games to go up there. So yeah, I'm not sure. They were my suggestions. Anyway, we are all done. Thank you very much. We've been 2 hours today because I've just rabbited on for ages. I'm starving. Vicky's starving. We're going to disappear now. Thank you very much to everybody for watching. Don't forget to enter the contest. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. And if you could leave me a comment on the video as well, that would be fantastic, especially if you're watching back afterwards. And just as one final reminder, these videos are not sponsored. Nobody's paid me any money to make this video whatsoever, and all of the advertising revenue goes to charity. So a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for making this video possible. And if you do want to support me directly, you can do so at patreon.com/gaming rules. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.